Welcome to FISM News. I'm Ian Patrick.
And I'm Samuel Case.
Today we look at the amended $1.9 trillion aid bill called the American Rescue Plan and how it has so far become a political football.
And Minneapolis preps for a high-tension trial over the death of George Floyd.
And we discuss the Johnson & Johnson vaccine with Twila Brase of Citizens Council for Health Freedom. You don't want to miss it. And our first news story here for you. The Senate on Saturday passed President Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief plan in a party line vote after an all-night session. The plan passed in a 50-49 vote with the support of every Democrat, but no Republicans. As I said, party line. Democrats used a process called reconciliation to pass the measure with a simple majority, rather than the 60 of 100 votes that is normally required under the chamber's rules. It is one of the largest stimulus bills in U.S. history and gives Biden his first major legislative victory since taking office. And here's President Biden on what the bill could do if passed.
The resources in this plan will be used to expand and speed up manufacturing and distribution of vaccines. Over 85% of American households will get direct payments of $1,400 per person. For a typical middle-class family of four, husband and wife working, making $100,000 a year total, with 3 kids, they'll get $5,600. With 2 kids, we'll get $5,600, and it'll be on the way soon. Unemployment benefits will be extended for 11 million Americans. Schools are going to have the resources they need to open safely. States and local governments that have lost tens of thousands of essential workers will have the resources they need available to them.
The extended jobless benefits that President Biden mentioned will be cut at $300 a week, or will be at $300 a week, excuse me. The current unemployment benefits expire on March 15th, giving increased pressure to complete the passage of the bill before that expiration date. About $350 billion in aid was also set aside for these state and local governments that Biden mentioned, and schools should have $170 billion to help in reopening. The bill was hotly contested as Democrats disagreed with one another over the jobless benefits, and Republicans tried all night to amend the bill. The Senate ended up rejecting the proposed $15 per hour minimum wage hike, one of the hotly debated inclusions in the House-passed bill. The House of Representatives recently announced that they will take up the bill on Wednesday.
In other political stories, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is in the midst of a political firestorm as members of his own party call for his resignation due to sexual harassment allegations and an ongoing scandal over fudged COVID-19 mortality numbers in nursing homes. On Sunday, Democratic State Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins said the governor must resign. She cited a mounting list of grievances against Cuomo as to why there must be a change in leadership. State Assembly Majority Leader Carl Heastie, also a Democrat, made similar comments but didn't outright call for a resignation. For his part, Cuomo said, "There is no way I resign." The governor said the allegations alone should not be the reason for a resignation, calling the idea anti-democratic. Here's Cuomo.
I have learned from what has been an incredibly difficult situation for me as well as other people. And I've learned an important lesson. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for whatever pain I caused anyone. I never intended it. And I will be the better for this experience.
In 2018, Cuomo urged then Supreme Court Justice nominee Brett Kavanaugh to take a polygraph test when he faced sexual assault allegations. And while Cuomo isn't asking for a polygraph himself, he is welcoming the Attorney General investigation. Conservative voices warn that Cuomo's harassment allegations shouldn't eclipse the larger scandal of New York's nursing home deaths and the subsequent cover-up.
And in COVID-19 news, on Monday, the CDC recommended that people who have been inoculated against COVID-19 can meet in small groups with other vaccinated people without the need to wear masks, as well as unvaccinated persons from one other household. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky describes the 2 scenarios for fully vaccinated individuals. Here she is.
The first scenario is fully vaccinated people visiting with other fully vaccinated people. In this scenario, CDC recommends that fully vaccinated people can visit with other fully vaccinated people in small gatherings indoors without wearing masks or physical distancing. CDC recommends that fully vaccinated people can visit with unvaccinated people from one other household indoors without wearing masks or physical distancing, as long as the unvaccinated people and any unvaccinated members of their household are not at high risk for severe COVID-19 disease.
For outside of the home, the CDC suggests continuing to wear masks, distancing themselves from others, and adhere to other prevention measures as have already been in place. The guidelines also state that a fully vaccinated person will not have to quarantine or undergo testing if they are asymptomatic after being knowingly exposed to someone with the coronavirus. However, because these vaccine candidates still pose uncertainties, the center also recommends getting tested if they do experience symptoms. Otherwise, they still recommend that no one travel too far from where they currently live. The recommendations come as about 30 million people have been fully inoculated with COVID-19 vaccines made by Pfizer, Moderna, and the most recently authorized Johnson & Johnson.
Minneapolis is preparing to try Derrick Chavin, the former policeman facing criminal charges for his role in the death of George Floyd, whose death sparked months of riots and protests. Chavin is charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter. The trial was originally intended to start Monday, but was delayed by an appeal to consider reinstating a third charge of third-degree murder. Chavin could face up to 40 years in prison if convicted on the most serious charge. The building where the trial is taking place is surrounded by barbed wire fencing and concrete barricades out of fear of disruption by protesters. Hundreds of demonstrators chanted in the streets around the courthouse on Monday, blocking traffic, while a small number of soldiers from the Minnesota National Guard watched from a distance. The judge set aside 3 weeks for jury selection, attempting the difficult task of finding impartial jurors for the case. Finding fair jurors is crucial as the final cause of Floyd's death is in dispute by medical reports. The medical examiner concluded Floyd died from excessive force when Chavin pinned him to the ground, the officer placing his knee on Floyd's neck. But the toxicology report suggests he died of a fentanyl overdose and said there's no physical evidence suggesting he died from asphyxiation. And stick with us, we'll be right back with a moment in history.
I was feeling lost about investing. And then I heard Dan Celia on the radio and learned more about his biblically responsible investing strategy. After hearing the details, I wanted to know more about my investments. So I called my advisor and asked to take a close look at my portfolio. I saw that my investments were full of companies that were supporting things that would dishonor God. So I made a change. Now I'm investing on my own, within my self-directed IRA, and I'm 100% biblically responsible. All my investments are honoring God. I'm not investing in any company that participates in things like abortion, gambling, or pornography. I feel empowered, confident that I'm honoring God with the money that He's blessed me with. Think about it. Wouldn't our Lord and Savior be a biblically responsible investor?
Regardless of who is in the White House, we stand on the Word of God. We stand on God's promises.
God will not be mocked.
Yeah.
He will not be mocked. He will come through and He will turn everything around for His good.
This is His nation.
That's right.
He loves this country, he loves us, and he's going to do something. And I'm actually really excited for when it happens.
And it's definitely not a time to fear.
We are still seeing women competing for a position on men's teams and even coaching on the sidelines at the highest level of sports.
What are you trying to prove by crossing over into the man side of things?
Right, yeah.
Be a woman and be proud to be a woman.
I don't know why, as women, we feel the need to compete against that because we can't.
I just think it's getting carried away, like a lot of things in culture and society right now.
Watch Outspoken on FISM.tv.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. In today's segment, we explore one of the most shocking national crimes in the history of the 20th century. If you ask any American born before the year 1960, they will likely be able to remember the exact moment when they found out that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated while riding in a motorcade parade in Dallas, Texas on November 22, 1963. History tells us that the prime suspect in this murder investigation was Lee Harvey Oswald, an embittered ex-Marine and an expert marksman. But we may never know for sure if he was the president's murderer because of the actions of a Dallas nightclub owner named Jack Ruby on November 24, 1963. Almost immediately after John F. Kennedy was shot while passing the Texas School Book Depository in midday on November 22nd, law enforcement officers found their prime suspect. Oswald was the owner of a rifle that had been left near the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository, the weapon that detectives believed fired the fatal shot at President Kennedy. Oswald was arrested at a nearby movie theater in the afternoon on November 22nd and immediately taken to police custody. Though Oswald claimed innocence, he was the prime suspect. 2 days after President Kennedy's death, Oswald was in police custody awaiting trial and preparing to be transferred to a different prison in Dallas. Several news stations were recording the transfer live for their viewers, hoping to catch a glimpse of the man who had murdered the president. Without warning, Jack Ruby wormed his way through the crowd and approached Oswald. He pulled out a .38 revolver pistol and fired a single shot at Oswald, killing him on live television before thousands of shocked viewers. Ruby was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and died in prison in 1967. While many believed Ruby acted out of righteous anger in the president's defense, others were not convinced. Some Americans are convinced that this act of public vengeance could have been part of a larger conspiracy to hide the truth about the president's murder. We may never know the true story of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, but what we do know is the impact of his death and its surrounding events on an entire generation of Americans. President Kennedy was survived by his wife Jacqueline and their 2 children, Caroline and John Jr. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
Welcome back to FISM News. Let's continue with coverage of what's going on in the state of Texas, where Governor Greg Abbott has been hard at work promoting conservative priorities. Over the weekend, he announced Operation Lone Star, a law enforcement effort intended to combat the smuggling of people and drugs into Texas. The effort combines the forces of the Texas Department of Public Safety with the National Guard and will make use of air, ground, marine, and border security resources. The governor said the U.S. faces a crisis at our southern border, made worse by the Biden administration's lax border security policies. Abbott said Texas supports legal immigration but will not be an accomplice to the open border policies that cause, rather than prevent, a humanitarian crisis in our state and endanger the lives of Texans. We will surge the resources and law enforcement personnel needed to confront this crisis. Meanwhile, the governor is also taking aim at censorship at the hand of big tech companies like Twitter and Facebook. In a press conference, Abbott pushed Texas Senator Brian Hughes' legislation, which allows for state residents to sue social media companies who've been deplatformed for their political views. Florida is pursuing similar legislation to combat social media censorship. In his CPAC speech, Donald Trump called on states to fight back against online censorship. Trump urged Republican-run states to punish Twitter, Google, and Facebook with major sanctions whenever they silence conservative voices. Here's a clip of that.
Republicans, conservatives must open up our platforms and repeal Section 230 liability protections. And if the federal government refuses to act, then every state in the union where we have the votes, which is a lot of them, big tech giants like Twitter, Google, and Facebook, should be punished with major sanctions whenever they silence conservative voices.
YouTube, which is owned by Google, has since scrubbed the speech from the site. But you can see the full speech that big tech doesn't want you to see at our site, FISM.tv/FISM News. We have the whole thing up there.
On Sunday, the White House urged computer network operators to gauge whether their systems were targeted amid a hack of Microsoft Core's Outlook email program, saying a recent software patch still left serious vulnerabilities. The Biden administration is urgently forming a task force to address the hack in the wake of recent allegations that Russian intelligence successfully hacked into American government agencies. While Microsoft released a patch last week to shore up flaws in its email software, the remedy still leaves open a so-called backdoor that can allow access to compromised servers and perpetuating further attacks by others. Sources say more than 20,000 U.S. organizations had been compromised by the hack, which Microsoft has blamed on China. The Chinese government has denied any involvement in the attack. On Sunday, a Microsoft representative said it was working with the government and others to help guide customers, and the company urged impacted clients to apply software updates as soon as possible. Neither the company nor the White House has specified the scale of the hack. Microsoft initially said it was limited, but last week, the White House expressed concern about the potential for a large number of victims.
And in a bit of world news for you, Myanmar security forces detained close to 50 individuals after a night of protests. One of them, an official from the deposed National League for Democracy, or NLD, who later ended up dying in police custody. This marks the second party figure to die in detention within 2 days. Police made the arrests by cornering protesters who were speaking out against the February coup and who were in defiance of a military-imposed nighttime curfew. However, thousands of people took to the streets in support of these typically younger protesters, allowing many of them to slip away. Daily protests against the coup are being staged across the country, and security forces have cracked down harshly. At this time, more than 60 protesters have reportedly been killed, and more than 1,800 of them detained by the police. The death of this NLD party member is just the latest in the casualties, as well as the second NLD official to have died in custody in, like I said, the last 2 days. The other official, who was a campaign manager, died after he was arrested only a few days earlier. Western powers and the UN had called on the military to allow the younger citizens to leave the area in safety. Britain, the US, and some other Western countries have imposed limited sanctions on the junta as of this moment. And stick with us, we'll be right back with our interview with Twila Brase. Don't miss it.
If there's anything that is unique to this generation, it's that they want answers about the future. They want to know how to succeed in life. The young people that I meet on a daily basis, and I speak to thousands every year, they want to know how to do life. And so one of the strongest things I can recommend is that they learn how to manage their money and the resources God gives them. And there's no better thing they could do to learn how to manage their resources than to follow the writing, the wisdom of Dan Celia. I've known Dan for several years. He is one of the wisest people I know, and his website is financialissues.org. And I say to audiences everywhere, if you want to get up to speed, not only on the culture, the markets, but the markets and resources from God's perspective, get up to speed on the work of Dan Celia, because he will help you do life.
We're here with Twila Brase, founder of the Citizens Council for Health Freedom and a regular guest on FISM TV's Financial Issues with Dan Celia. Twila, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you on.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great. So what we're curious about is the new Johnson & Johnson candidate. And we were doing a little bit of research into this. And based on our understanding, and this is where you're here to correct us perhaps, this is much more similar to a traditional vaccine where you have a dead or almost dead virus that you're going to inject into someone's body to create an immune response. I was, as opposed to the others, such as the Pfizer, which uses this new mRNA technology. Is that a correct understanding of this vaccine candidate? And I would also just like to know your general thoughts and what research you've seen about it.
I think that is correct. Although I will just say about vaccines. So yes, this is it actually takes the DNA of part of the spike protein, which are all those little spikes that are around the coronavirus. And those spikes are attachment devices, so they attach to the cell. So they have taken a piece of the genetic code of the spike and put it into a typically rather harmless adenovirus, which can cause colds and that sort of thing. And so then they put that in, and then it replicates, it does a replication process, which starts up the immune system. So rather than messenger RNA, they're using the DNA of the spike protein. But the spike protein doesn't cause any diseases, it just attaches. So that's to answer your question. But when you said, is this like a normal vaccine? So I kind of like to remind people about what a normal vaccine is. Let's just take tetanus, for example. If you get a tetanus vaccine, you are planning to not get tetanus. That's the whole plan there, that your body will reject it and will absolutely do nothing in no way, shape, or form giving you any part of a tetanus condition. But this is more like the flu vaccine, which is just supposed to start up some antibody response in hopes of minimizing the symptoms if you get the flu. So that's what all of these are doing, is they're minimizing the symptoms. The purpose is not to stop COVID-19, but to stop the symptoms of it, or to reduce the symptoms of it. This is why they have said that they aren't for sure whether or not people who have had the vaccine can spread the vaccine, because that's not what the vaccine was tested on. It was tested on reducing the symptoms, not actually stopping the virus.
And another question, a follow-up, because we have so many different types of vaccines or candidates, if you will, from say Pfizer and AstraZeneca. Now we have this Johnson & Johnson one. Is there a way for a patient to say they're more comfortable with the Johnson & Johnson one over another vaccine to request a specific brand? Is that a possibility with a healthcare provider?
I think that is in question, because it depends on who has gotten which vaccine. So in their distribution, and different states are distributing them differently, they will distribute a certain amount of X vaccine to Y facility, and if you want the ABC vaccine, let's just say Johnson & Johnson in this case, and your facility doesn't have it, well, then, you may or may not be able to find out where that is. I'm not certain. I haven't seen anything that really tells me that they're declaring which vaccine is in which facility. Now, I may have missed it. You can always ask and see what the possibility is of getting the vaccine of your choice. But I haven't heard that they're, announcing it.
Once again, Twila Brase from Citizens Council for Health Freedom. Go to cchfreedom.org to see more of what Twila and the organization are doing. Thank you so much again for coming on with us, Twila. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You just saw an excerpt of an interview that we had with Twila Brase of Citizens Council for Health Freedom, talking about the new Johnson & Johnson vaccine candidate. If you would like to see the full interview, go online to our news page at fism.tv/FISM News, and you'll learn more about the vaccine itself and its implications for the future. And if you're having trouble finding it, if it's not on the front of our page, just go to the little search bar and type in Twila, Brase, or Johnson & Johnson. It should be one of the first few to come up. And for our final bit of coverage for the night, we'll hand it off to Seth Udinsky. Take it away, Seth.
Thanks, Ian. We have some interesting coverage from France. The French government has begun gathering lumber to rebuild the spire of Notre Dame Cathedral, one of the most iconic churches in the world. The massive oaks will be used to replace the original spire of the cathedral, which was destroyed in a devastating and highly publicized fire in April of 2019. The new spire will consist of nearly 1,000 oak trees, each of which is worth roughly $18,000. One of the trunks will serve as a 60-foot tall beam to support the weight of the new spire. The Notre Dame Cathedral has been a crown jewel of Christianity, Western civilization, and French nationalism since the High Middle Ages. Construction began on the cathedral in the 12th century AD, and the walls and parts of the ceiling were completed in the 14th century. Most of the cathedral's original medieval foundation and superstructure survived the 2019 fire. The magnificent spire, which suffered the greatest damage in the fire, was completed in a mid-19th century addition. The cathedral has housed French Catholic masses for centuries, and it is currently owned by the French government. According to French President Emmanuel Macron, the spire will be rebuilt exactly as it was in the 19th century. The new spire is still several years away from completion, as the recently felled oaks must now dry for at least a year before they are ready to be carved and weatherized.
And that's all that we have for you today, so thank you so much for joining us once again, and stick around for more great content from FISM TV.
And for any more updates until next time, check out our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're also on Rumble. You can check out our accounts at FISM News, or you can go straight to the source by going to FISM.tv/FISM News. Don't forget, we have the full Trump speech from CPAC up on our site. Thank you so much, and you have a good night.
My name's Luke.
My name is Darlene.
My name is Kay.
Hi, I'm Trinity.
My name's Samuel Case.
I'm Pat.
My name is Ian Patrick.
Welcome to FISM Studios.